Before we begin, hit that like button, drop a comment with your favorite apex predator, and don't forget to subscribe for more HFY stories where humans shock the galaxy. Now let's dive in. The first thing Elias Ward noticed when stepping onto the training grounds of the Ardenspire Academy was how loud the aliens laughed when they thought someone weaker had stumbled into their domain. Their voices echoed across the stony courtyard, guttural and sharp, a chorus of mocking tones that never seemed to tire. He had been warned that the Academy, tucked into the cliffs of a feral world, would be brutal. It was a crucible where the strongest sons of empires were forged into leaders. But no one had told him that mockery could cut deeper than claws. Elias carried himself quietly, neither trying to look intimidating nor submissive. His frame was lean, unremarkable compared to the hulking reptilian cadets or the insectoid warriors whose carapaces gleamed like armor. He wore the same gray survival suit as everyone else, but somehow on him it looked plainer, like a target. To them, he was soft prey who had wandered where he did not belong. The alien bandits came for him on the third day, a pack of 5 older and broader than him by several years. Their leader was Korak, a tusked brute from a predator race called the Branth. His voice rumbled like gravel ground between iron. "The prey walks alone," Korak sneered, his fangs glinting as he stepped into Elias' path. "Did the humans send you here as a joke? Or as bait?" The others closed in, forming a loose half-circle around him. Elias let his eyes drift between them without flinching. Inside, his chest felt tight, his breath too shallow. But he had learned something long before arriving on this distant world. When predators circle, showing fear is an invitation. "Just walking back to camp," Elias said. His tone was flat, deliberate. He wasn't giving them a performance to feed on. One of the bandits, a lanky insectoid named Vrisel, chittered in amusement. "Camp? No, little prey, you'll stay here a while. We want to see what happens when a soft-skinned human is stripped of his tools. Does he run? Does he cry?" They laughed, their voices scraping against each other like blades. Korak shoved Elias hard in the shoulder. He stumbled but caught his footing. The Branth leaned close, his tusks almost brushing Elias' cheek. "Tell us, human, do you know what hunts in these forests at night? Even our kind bleed when it stalks. What chance does a soft skin have?" Elias didn't answer. He could smell Korak's rancid breath, hear the bloodlust simmering beneath the laughter. He understood then that the mockery wasn't just cruelty, it was ritual, the way predators reassured themselves of their place in the chain. By belittling him they confirmed their own strength. But the forest around them was changing. Elias noticed it first. A moment ago the canopy had been alive with shrill insect calls, wings humming, unseen creatures rattling branches. Now the night air pressed in strangely silent. His eyes flicked toward the treeline where the shadows seemed too dense. He felt it in his bones, something large was moving there. "Not answering?" Korak growled, grabbing Elias by the collar. His claws pricked the fabric, lifting him a few inches off the ground. The others howled in approval. "Then perhaps we'll feed you to the dark and see what happens." Elias' gaze didn't break from the treeline. "Behind you," he said softly. The laughter faltered, then rose again, sharper, derisive. "Classic prey trick," Vrisel hissed. "Always pointing at shadows." But Korak stiffened. Something primal tickled the edges of his senses. The air carried a faint musk, a metallic tang that did not belong to cadets or campfires. The other bandits began to glance over their shoulders. Leaves shifted though there was no wind. Elias felt the pressure in his chest tighten further, but he refused to look away. He had grown up reading about Earth's hunters, wolves, lions, bears, and learned that when the wild grew silent, it was not chance. It was warning. That knowledge held him steady while the bandits finally turned toward the shadows. 2 eyes burned from the underbrush, molten gold in the fading light. They did not blink. They did not move. They watched with the patience of something that had never once failed to close the distance on prey. The bandits froze, their laughter choking into silence. Every muscle in their bodies remembered suddenly that they were not the top of the chain here. Elias, pinned in Korak's grip, felt the Brantha's claws tremble against his suit. The shape unfolded from the treeline. It was massive, built low to the ground, with shoulders that rippled under fur and scaled ridges. Each paw sank into the earth without sound. A predator born of this planet, feared by hunters across the quadrant. Elias' breath caught, not in fear but in recognition of majesty. The bandits stepped back, their bravado shattered. Korik dropped Elias roughly and stumbled away. Vreesel's mandibles clicked nervously. No, impossible. It doesn't come this close to the academy. Elias rose slowly to his feet. He did not run. Instinct told him running would trigger the chase, and he had no illusions about speed. Instead he steadied himself, his pulse hammering in his ears, and met the predator's golden gaze. The beast padded closer, each step a quiet promise of death. The bandits' weapons shook in their hands but none dared fire. They knew what the retaliation would bring. The silence deepened until even their ragged breathing seemed too loud. Then the predator stopped, its massive frame towering over them. It lowered its head slightly, not to the bandits but to Elias as though curious. Its eyes left the circle of aliens and fixed on the young human they had mocked. Elias felt the world narrow to that gaze. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet something deeper whispered that this was not the moment to falter. He stood still, heart pounding, while the others trembled behind him. And then the beast's lips curled, revealing fangs longer than Korik's tusks, as it stalked one step forward. The aliens' courage finally shattered, their sneers dissolving into raw fear. The last sound before the night swallowed them was not laughter, but the scrape of claws against stone as the galaxy's deadliest predator closed in from behind. The predator stepped into the open, and the forest seemed to recoil around it. Muscles coiled beneath a pelt of dark fur streaked with scaled ridges that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Its paws made no sound as they pressed into the earth, yet every movement carried the inevitability of a storm front rolling in. Golden eyes flicked across the circle of aliens, pinning each in turn as if choosing which would bleed first. The bandits had tormented countless students, but mockery held no strength now. Their leader, Korik, stumbled back, tusks bared not in confidence but fear. His claws twitched toward his blade, yet instinct urged him to remain still. Vreesel's mandibles clicked in panic, his legs jerking as though ready to bolt. The predator's gaze lingered on them, but its head turned sharply, nostrils flaring toward Elias. Elias stood rigid, every muscle tensed, his body urging him to flee while his mind reminded him what Earth's hunters had taught: never run. He forced his breath into slow, measured rhythm, even as his heart hammered. The predator lowered its snout near him, inhaling, the heat of its breath washing over his face. A growl vibrated deep in its chest, low enough to rattle his ribs. The bandits could bear it no longer. One broke first, sprinting into the treeline. The predator's head snapped toward the motion, and in a blink, its body blurred forward. The forest swallowed the fleeing alien's scream almost instantly, replaced by the sound of bones snapping like dry twigs. Silence returned, more suffocating than before. Korik cursed, drawing his blade with trembling hands. "We fight. It's distracted." But the predator emerged again, crimson staining its muzzle. It did not attack immediately. It padded back to Elias' side and stood, muscles taut, eyes blazing with a primal hunger. Korik's words died in his throat. The beast had killed easily, yet it now loomed protectively near the very human they had mocked. Elias felt the shift. The creature wasn't guarding him by chance. Something in the way it had chosen to stand between him and the others carried intent. The realization struck both exhilarating and terrifying. It had claimed him. The remaining bandits backed away, their bravado crumbling. Vreesel stammered, his voice thin. "Why him? Why does it not strike him?" The predator's tail lashed once, a warning. Korik snarled in frustration, though fear strangled the sound. He raised his weapon high, desperate to reclaim control. "It doesn't matter. Kill the prey, kill the beast." Elias' voice cut through, firm though quiet. "Don't." The word startled even him, but it carried weight. His eyes locked on Korik's, unflinching. "If you strike, it will tear you apart. Step back." The Branthus fury warred with his survival instinct. His tusks clicked together as he hesitated. That pause was enough. The predator lunged forward, not at Elias but at Korik. The alien tried to parry, but the sheer force of the beast's paw sent him crashing to the ground, blade clattering away. Its jaws hovered inches from his throat, a guttural snarl vibrating through the air. Elias moved without thinking. "Stop." The predator froze, jaws still open, fangs gleaming. Its eyes flicked to Elias, searching. For a long, taut moment, the world balanced on a blade's edge. Then it drew back, stepping off Korik, who scrambled away, clutching at the dirt with trembling claws. The other bandits fled into the forest, abandoning their leader. Korik crawled backward, disbelief written across his face. His kind had always feared this beast, respected it as death incarnate. Yet here it was, standing still because a human had spoken. Elias exhaled, his legs trembling now that the tension had broken. The predator's gaze returned to him. Slowly, deliberately, it lowered its massive head, pressing its snout to the ground near his feet. The gesture carried no aggression. It resembled a bow. The weight of what had happened settled on him like a mantle. Around them, the forest began to stir again, distant chirps and wing beats tentatively resuming, but nothing could erase the impression burned into the minds of all who had seen it. The galaxy's deadliest predator, the beast feared by hunters and warlords alike, had chosen not to kill a human. It had chosen to stand with him. Korik's voice shook, a whisper edged with disbelief. "What are you, human?" Elias had no answer. He only knew that whatever path lay ahead, the moment would not be forgotten. The predator lifted its head again, golden eyes reflecting the faint starlight, and its tail swept the ground as though it would stalk whoever dared mock its chosen human again. The night closed in around them, heavy with the knowledge that something had shifted, something no alien arrogance could explain away. The boy they had mocked was no prey. And the predator that walked behind him would ensure the galaxy learned it. Word of the encounter spread before dawn. By the time Elias returned to the academy's perimeter, whispers trailed him like a shadow. Cadets who had once snickered behind his back now stared in uneasy silence, their gazes fixed not on him but on the enormous shape padding a few paces behind. The predator's eyes gleamed even in daylight, its gait smooth and patient, every motion promising sudden violence. The guards at the gate raised their weapons out of instinct, then lowered them when the beast merely sat, its tail curling against the ground as though it were a hound waiting for its master. Elias wanted nothing more than to slip back into anonymity, but anonymity was gone. Instructors stormed into the courtyard, their voices clipped with disbelief, demanding explanations. He told them only the truth, that the bandits had cornered him, that the predator had appeared, and that for reasons he could not explain it had chosen not to kill him. No one believed silence could hold such sway. The Branth elders muttered about sorcery, the insectoid mentors accused him of concealing some human device, and still the predator remained outside the gates, waiting. That evening, the head instructor summoned Elias to the assembly chamber. The room was filled with representatives of multiple species, their faces masks of suspicion and awe. Korik was there too, bandaged and humiliated, his tusks ground together in frustration. When asked, he could only choke out that the predator had nearly killed him but stopped at the human's word. His testimony did not ease Elias' position, it only deepened the mystery. "You expect us to believe," one reptilian elder hissed, "that a creature which has slaughtered entire hunting parties simply obeyed you?" Elias' throat felt dry. "I didn't command it. I spoke and it listened. That's all I know." The chamber rippled with discontent. Some demanded his expulsion, others whispered of dissecting the predator to learn its secret. Elias felt the walls pressing in. Yet in that suffocating moment, the predator itself entered the chamber, its bulk forcing cadets to scatter, instructors to raise weapons they dared not fire. It moved past them all, brushing aside fear and authority alike, and stopped beside him. Its massive head lowered until it nearly touched his shoulder. The gesture silenced the room more effectively than any argument could. No one dared challenge him openly after that. The predator followed him everywhere, from training fields to the mess hall, an unshakable guardian. The cadets gave him wide berth, whispering as they watched the human walk with death at his heel. He named the beast Shadeclaw, not as an owner naming a pet, but as a man acknowledging a presence too great to remain nameless. Shadeclaw seemed to accept the name with a slow blink, a sound in its throat like distant thunder. The bond unsettled Elias more than it reassured him. He had not sought it, yet it had chosen him. Some nights, lying awake while Shadeclaw prowled outside his quarters, he wondered if this was protection or a leash of another kind. The galaxy's deadliest predator had decided he was worth guarding. But why? The central conflict sharpened as rumors reached beyond the academy. Mercenary clans whispered of capturing the beast, warlords dreamed of unleashing it in battle, and elders feared what humanity might become if predators across the stars bent their wills toward them. A single boy with a beast at his side had shaken the quiet hierarchy of power. Elias felt the tension tighten around him like a noose. His fellow students glared with envy and hatred. Korik, stripped of authority, nursed his grudge, promising in hushed tones that the humans' luck would not last. More troubling still were the emissaries who arrived from distant systems, their robes heavy with tradition, their questions sharp with unease. One elder, her skin lined with patterns of silver, addressed him directly during a session of inquiry. On your homeworld, human, is it true that your kind has long bound predators to your side? Wolves, falcons, great cats. Elias hesitated, realizing how his answer might echo. We didn't bind them. We earned their trust. Sometimes through patience, sometimes through respect. It isn't about control. The elder's eyes narrowed. Then perhaps it is more dangerous than control. A bond freely given cannot be broken by force. The words lingered long after the council dismissed him. He returned to the courtyard to find Shadeclaw waiting, its golden eyes fixed on him as if sensing his unease. When Elias reached out a tentative hand, the predator leaned into the touch with a rumbling purr that reverberated through his arm. In that moment he understood the source of the galaxy's fear. It wasn't just that humans could kill. It was that they could inspire loyalty from creatures the galaxy itself had deemed untamable. Still, he couldn't ignore the weight of envy gathering around him. One night, while he walked the training perimeter, Shadeclaw at his side, stones clattered from the cliffs. A group of cadets stepped from the shadows, their eyes burning with desperation. They carried nets laced with energy filaments, weapons humming low. We'll take it from you, human, one spat. No creature like that should belong to prey. Elias raised his hands, not in fear but in warning. You don't understand. It doesn't belong to me. It chose me. If you try to take it. Shadeclaw's snarl cut through the night, a sound so deep the ground itself seemed to tremble. The cadets froze, their courage draining in the face of that primal fury. Slowly, one by one, they lowered their weapons and backed away. Elias let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. But the incident proved what he already feared. Others would keep coming. Jealous cadets, ambitious mercenaries, perhaps even entire factions. Shadeclaw was more than a beast, it had become a symbol. And symbols were never left unchallenged. As he returned to his quarters, Shadeclaw stalking close beside him, Elias felt the threads of a larger story weaving around him. He had wanted only to survive the Academy's trials, to prove humans could stand alongside the galaxy's finest. Instead, he had become the center of a struggle none of them could ignore. The bond between man and predator was no longer private. It was a spark, and sparks had a way of setting fire to the dry tinder of fear. That night, while the stars wheeled coldly overhead, Elias lay awake, listening to Shadeclaw's steady breathing just beyond the wall. Every sound of the predator's presence carried both reassurance and menace. He knew the bandits' mockery had been silenced, but the galaxy's gaze was now fixed firmly upon him. Somewhere in the darkness, plans were already being laid, traps already being drawn. And he understood with a clarity that made his chest ache. The moment he had spoken and Shadeclaw had listened, his life had ceased to be his own. The conspiracy did not begin with shouts in the courtyard but with whispers in the dormitories. The bandits who had once mocked Elias now muttered with venom, their shame festering into resolve. Korik's humiliation became a rallying point for older students and mercenaries drifting around the Academy's edges, men who saw Shadeclaw not as a wonder but as a weapon waiting to be leashed. Elias felt their eyes following him through the corridors, their voices falling silent when he passed, the air thick with intent. Shadeclaw remained ever near, a looming presence at his back. The predator unsettled the Academy's order, scattering cadets from training grounds and silencing lessons. Even instructors lost authority in its shadow. Though Elias tried to keep his head low, his days were no longer his own. Every sparring match, every lecture, every step was observed through the lens of fear and envy. He had become the boy who walked with death, and death was something others longed to own. The trap was sprung during a wilderness exam, a test of survival where students were scattered into the forest with only rations and knives. Elias had expected solitude, but the woods hummed with unnatural silence, and the hairs on his arms prickled before he saw them. From behind stone ridges and thick branches, figures emerged in unison, mercenaries in mismatched armor, their weapons glowing faintly in the gloom. They had come not as students but as hunters. Elias froze, his knife small in his palm compared to the rifles aimed at him. Shadeclaw's growl rose like distant thunder, fur bristling, eyes blazing with anticipation. The mercenaries flinched but stood their ground. One, scarred across the jaw, spoke with a voice that carried ruthless certainty. "Stand aside, human. The beast belongs to us." Elias felt his breath steady. "It doesn't belong to anyone." The man sneered. "Then it belongs to the strongest. And you are not the strongest." The first shot came without warning, searing past Elias' head and striking the ground near Shadeclaw's paws. The predator erupted forward, a blur of claws and muscle, scattering mercenaries like leaves in a gale. Blades flashed, rifles cracked, and screams tore through the forest. Elias dove aside, rolling behind a fallen tree, the smell of ozone sharp in his nose. He gripped his knife tighter, scanning the chaos. Shadeclaw fought like a storm-given flesh, but sheer numbers pressed against it, nets flaring as they tried to bind its limbs. Elias knew he couldn't match their strength, but humans had always thrived through cunning. He hurled stones into the undergrowth, drawing attention where Shadeclaw could ambush. He cut through energy filaments with his knife, freeing the predator each time the nets tightened. Twice he sprang from cover to strike mercenaries from behind, his blade flashing quick and precise. He felt fear pounding in his chest, but fear sharpened him, carved him into something more dangerous. Shadeclaw bled, its flank seared by plasma fire, yet it fought on with a ferocity that staggered even seasoned killers. Elias threw himself in front of one strike, shoving a mercenary's rifle aside before it could fire point blank into the beast's chest. The blow sent him sprawling, his ribs aching, but Shadeclaw responded with a roar that froze the clearing. Its jaws clamped down on the attacker's arm, metal crunching, bone snapping. For an instant, silence returned. The mercenaries faltered, shaken by the sight of a human shielding the predator rather than cowering behind it. Elias pushed himself upright, blood on his lip, and shouted through ragged breath. "Leave now. You've seen what happens when you try to take it. This ends before more die." But ambition dies harder than men. Reinforcements poured in from the trees, armored figures bearing heavier weapons, their visors glinting coldly. Elias felt the weight of inevitability pressing in. Shadeclaw growled, staggering slightly but still standing tall, tail lashing in defiance. The forest seemed too small to contain what was coming. Above, on the ridge, more figures appeared, observers cloaked in the insignias of elder races. They had come expecting to witness a human's failure, a brief spectacle before mercenaries claimed their prize. What they saw instead was a boy fighting with fury and intellect, a predator at his side not enslaved but loyal, a bond forged not by power but by choice. Murmurs rippled among them, some shocked, some fearful. The mercenaries closed in, tightening the noose. Elias' chest heaved, every muscle trembling, yet he refused to retreat. Shadeclaw lowered itself, massive head brushing his shoulder as though acknowledging that the battle ahead might be their last. For a heartbeat, human and predator breathed as one. Then the clearing lit with the glow of dozens of rifle sights, converging on them. The mercenaries had not been defeated, they had only begun. The air vibrated with tension, each second stretched into eternity, until even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Elias lifted his knife, Shadeclaw's growl building beside him, and for the first time he felt not fear but resolve. Whatever storm was about to break, they would meet it together. The forest seemed to close around Elias as the mercenaries advanced, their weapons humming with restrained energy. He could taste iron in the air, smell the acrid smoke of half-burnt charges. Shadeclaw pressed close to his side, its wounds leaking dark trails onto the leaves, yet its eyes burned with an intensity that shamed Elias' own fear. For the first time since finding the beast, he realized how much they mirrored one another, cornered, battered, but unbroken. The leader of the mercenaries stepped forward, a heavy cannon braced against his chest plate, his voice cold and commanding. "Stand down, boy. You've proven spirit, but spirit dies easily. Hand over the creature, and you may leave with your life." Elias tightened his grip on the knife, small against the monstrous barrel leveled at him. His heart pounded, yet beneath the fear there was something sharper, a clarity that only surfaced when nothing remained to lose. "You still don't understand," he said, voice steady. "It chose me. And I'll bleed beside it before I betray that." The mercenaries did not laugh. They saw in his stance a truth they could not mock away. The leader gestured, and a storm of light erupted. Beams seared across the clearing, explosions shattering stone and tree alike. Shadeclaw leapt into the maelstrom, a blur of muscle and fury, swiping soldiers into the air, crushing armor beneath its claws. Elias moved like a shadow beside it, never matching the beast's power but striking with precision, cutting through weapon straps, disabling rifles, turning chaos into advantage. Still the numbers pressed in. Elias was thrown to the ground by a concussive blast, his knife spinning from his hand. A mercenary loomed above, rifle angled down. He could see his own reflection in the visor, wide-eyed, trembling, human. Time slowed, and he thought of his father's words before he left for the academy. Courage is not the absence of fear but what you do in its grip. Elias reached not for the rifle but for the dirt, scooping a handful and flinging it into the visor. As the mercenary staggered, Shadeclaw surged from the side, jaws snapping, and the soldier vanished beneath its weight. Pain tore through Elias' ribs when he pushed himself up, but he stood anyway. Shadeclaw circled back, panting heavily, blood matting its fur. Their gazes met, predator and human both on the edge of collapse, yet both unwilling to yield. The mercenaries faltered at the sight, some retreating, others hesitating. It was not just the beast they feared now, but the boy who refused to be separated from it. Above, the cloaked observers from the elder races had not left. They whispered among themselves, their disbelief growing with every passing moment. The galaxy's deadliest predator had bent neither to chains nor weapons, yet here it fought in tandem with a fragile human child. To them it was not loyalty but heresy against the natural order. The mercenary leader roared, charging through his own faltering line, cannon primed for a killing blow. Shadeclaw moved to intercept, but Elias stumbled forward, forcing himself between them. The leader sneered. "You think you can shield it with your flesh?" "No," Elias whispered, every word pulled from his lungs like iron, "but together we shield each other." The cannon fired. Shadeclaw lunged. The explosion that followed shook the forest, flame and shockwave tearing through the clearing. Elias felt himself thrown back, the world spinning, his ears filled with a roar that was not just sound but the cry of the beast itself. He hit the ground hard, gasping, smoke curling into the sky. Through the haze he saw the leader struggling to rise, armor shattered, cannon twisted. Shadeclaw towered above him, chest heaving, fur scorched but still alive. Its eyes glowed with primal rage, yet when it looked back to Elias, the fury softened. The predator stepped aside, leaving the leader broken but breathing. The choice to kill was its to make, yet it mirrored Elias' restraint. The battlefield stilled. Mercenaries dropped their weapons, backing away, their will broken. Elias dragged himself upright, his knife lost, his body aching, but his spirit burning brighter than ever. He stood not because he was unhurt, but because Shadeclaw was still beside him, and that was enough. The observers above could remain silent no longer. A voice, ancient and resonant, rang across the clearing. "Impossible. The predator yields to no master. It devours kings and generals alike, yet here it guards a child. What sorcery is this?" Elias looked up, blood streaking his face, and though he did not understand their words, he knew their meaning. He placed his hand against Shadeclaw's muzzle, the predator lowering its massive head until it touched his shoulder. "Not sorcery," Elias said softly, mostly to himself. "Just trust." The whisper carried in the silence, amplified by the predator's calm. The galaxy's deadliest beast purred, a sound that rolled through the clearing like thunder gentled by rain. To the mercenaries, it was the sound of defeat. To the elders, it was a declaration of something far more dangerous than any weapon, bond. Shadeclaw pressed closer, and Elias let his weight rest against it, too exhausted to stand on his own. Around them, the forest smoldered, mercenaries scattered, silence reclaiming the world. He had not only survived the ambush but transformed it into revelation. Where others had seen a monster to cage, he had found a companion willing to bleed beside him. For Elias, the battle was not victory but beginning. He knew the eyes above would not forget, that whispers would spread through academies and councils, carrying news of the impossible sight. A predator feared across galaxies had bowed its head not to power, not to chains, but to a boy who offered nothing but loyalty in return. The mercenary leader staggered once more, trying to rise, but Shadeclaw loosed a single growl. The man froze, then fled into the forest, his army dissolving with him. Elias sank to the ground, too weary to give chase, his vision dimming at the edges. Shadeclaw lay beside him, curling its massive body protectively around his smaller frame. The warmth of the beast's fur steadied his shivering, its heartbeat a drum that lulled him toward rest. Before darkness claimed him, Elias thought he heard the elder's final words drifting down. Perhaps humanity is not what we believed. Perhaps it is more. The forest fell quiet again, the echoes of violence fading into the distance. Elias closed his eyes, and the predator's purr rumbled on as if guarding his dreams. The universe had witnessed its deadliest beast bow to a human's touch, and nothing would ever be the same.